Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Lawrence Lang, and today I've stayed closer to home and have travelled into London to meet up with Pamela Baxter.
Hello, Lawrence. I'm interrupting you there, I know, but I've got a little surprise for you.
Oh.
You may have been wondering why I'm wearing the scarf around my neck on quite a mild day.
Right.
Well, it's to hide part of my sweatshirt. I'm just going to take it off now. The scarf, that is. And this, you may not have seen before. You may have done, but I'd be very surprised if you have, because it's very old. This is an original D'Oyly Carte sweatshirt with the D'Oyly Carte logo on.
Yes.
And these little characters here. They're mostly pattermen. I think there's a Jack Point, there's a Bunthorne, there's a Coco, a Chancellor, and I was trying to make out that one. Don't know if you can see. I think I can see a skull and crossbones, so I think it's the Pirate King.
Yes.
He's the odd one out. Anyway, I thought I'd wear it today. I do wear it. It's not that it's been in the cupboard or anything. I do wear it a couple of times every winter. And, you know, it's 46 years old. And it's in pretty good shape.
It is indeed.
And you can still read everything.
Yes.
It's not worn off. And it still fits. So I thought you'd be interested in that.
Very much so.
And in this bag here, you may have been wondering about that as well. I've got another one. Here we are, different colour. And this is the Pirates of Penzance centenary. So that proves, 79 I think it came out in America, 80. So, you know, it's 46 years old. And that fits as well.
Excellent.
So I wore this in your honour.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And there are still these odd bits of D'Oyly Carte memorabilia, because I used to have one of the old car badges.
Oh.
And although, you know, there's no longer grills on cars, it is screwed to the wall of my garage.
Yeah, I don't think I have one of those.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
You joined the D'Oyly Carte chorus in October 1979 and soon started to understudy some of the mezzo roles, going on frequently as Edith in Pirates and Pitti-Sing in Mikado and in The Gondoliers. You stayed with the company until its closure in February 1982, and it is actually rather appropriate. It wasn't planned like this, but I suddenly realised that today, the 27th of February, when we're sitting down having this conversation, is actually the 44th anniversary of the closure of the original D'Oyly Carte Opera Company. So we will have a few words to say about that a little bit later on. So, as I say, you stayed with them until the closure. What tempted you, though, to join the D'Oyly Carte? Were you familiar with Gilbert and Sullivan, or was it a new voyage of discovery?
Well, I've always enjoyed reading weekly magazines, or when I was younger, children's comics. They were Woman and Woman's Own, Jackie, Diana, and occasionally something called Fab 208 as a teenager. Then as an infant, Jack and Jill and Teddy Bear, and at junior school, Princess and the Bunty. In addition to the comics, I remember getting annuals at Christmas. And in one such annual, I like to think it was the Bunty, but I think it might have been Princess, there was written out the story of the Mikado, which was beautifully illustrated, and some of the words of Nanki Poo's song were included. Although I was very young then, I do remember it, because my Auntie Pat had seen the D'Oyly Carte perform the Mikado, and she sang a bit of A Wandering Minstrel to me from the book. And that was my very first introduction to Gilbert and Sullivan.
Right.
I so wish that I'd kept that annual, but I'm afraid it got cleared out with most of my toys before I left home. At my second junior school, the headmaster was a music specialist, and he taught me to read music and to sing out. I also joined the church choir and became head chorister. In fact, this was my first job, earning me a small fee for each service, and I think it was ½ a crown for a wedding. Then G&S wasn't really part of my life again until at grammar school, aged about 16, I played Samuel in the Pirates of Penzance. and I was completely hooked. I went on to the University of Manchester to read maths, and I think the first thing I did when I got there in Freshers' Week was to seek out the GNS Society. Incidentally, their initials spelt Mugs. I became their treasurer and played several roles, the first of which was Melissa in Princess Ida, and the title role was sung by Ros Griffiths, who was finishing music college that year and who then joined the D'Oyly Carte herself. Mugs was the very best thing about uni and so important to me. I can remember one day when we had a concert in the evening, I skipped my afternoon lectures to go and have my hair done. I also befriended a girl whose parents lived in Bradford, and we used to go over to their place on many a weekend, get out the GNS scores and just sing through them. I remember singing all the parts, male and female, made no difference. We loved it. Then after I graduated, I did a dip ed year and took private singing lessons. And my teacher, Glenville Hargreaves, persuaded me to audition for the Royal Northern College of Music. I studied there for 4 years with Sylvia Jacobs, and in the final year, when D'Oyly Carte was playing Manchester, I got an audition at the Opera House. I sang Iolanthes' song from the stage, and I'm pleased to say that I was offered a job. I joined the company in 1979 as a chorister. This was a full-time, permanent job, and I can't recall any other singer in my year at college leaving to do anything similar.
Okay, so actually when you joined in that October, you did so with about 8 other new members, including the likes of Bruce Graham, Alistair Donkin, Clive Birch and Michelle Shipley being amongst them. I recently spoke to both Michelle and Alistair, so I'm gradually tracking you all down. When you joined, were you aware that the writing was on the wall for the company and that there was only a few more years left with it?
No, I don't think I knew that the future of the company was in jeopardy, but if I had known, it wouldn't have put me off. I was absolutely thrilled to become a part of it. I remember that we were sponsored by Barclays Bank, at least for some of the time. I also remember going to some Barclays Bank lunches and wearing a Barclays Bank t-shirt. I also remember people began talking about possible closure at some point, and I think it was Freddie Lloyd who told us not to worry because he thought that English heritage would save it. In the summer of '81, our final venue was Cambridge, and because there was no theatre large enough there, we played in a tent on Jesus Green. And everyone was saying, we just can't have our final performance under canvas. We then continued for several more months into 1982 and closed in London's West End.
So when you actually joined the D'Oyly Carte, did you see it as potentially a long-term career and that they would be employers for life?
I don't remember thinking along those lines before I joined, but after I got to know my colleagues, I realised that some of them had really made a career with the company and they seemed very happy. Some joined as principals and of course remained as principals, and others were choristers for quite a long time. When a principal left, they often brought in a new singer from outside the company, but sometimes a chorister would be promoted. This happened to Lorraine Daniels before the Australian tour, I think, and I felt encouraged by this.
The D'Oyly Carte was a company that travelled for 48 weeks a year. How did your family feel about this nomadic life that you had chosen?
Well, I was married to my first husband at the time, and I think he was actually quite pleased to be able to say that I was a professional singer. My parents, they just wanted me to be happy. And I later was told that my Auntie Pat, who I mentioned earlier, was very proud of me.
So did you actually enjoy the touring life?
You were right in saying it was in October 1979 that I joined the chorus, but that was the beginning of the tour. The new choristers started rehearsing the music and basic moves in the August, with Paul Seeley on the piano and Jimmy Marsland working us through the chorus scenes. I remember going for my costume fitting, and for some shows being given a choice of more than one. I also remember a wad of name labels in them, as the names of the singers who wore them were never removed, and some of the costumes were quite old. In order to prepare for the tour, we then had a run-through with the whole company, who'd returned from their Australian tour and a brief holiday. The first show, and my first performance, was Mikado. And I remember how very different everyone looked in their costumes and makeup, and I experienced a slight feeling of panic as I tried to find my place behind the correct chorister in the wings, just before comes a train of little ladies. Then, as we made our entrance, in spite of all my previous experience as a student, I remember feeling completely awestruck. My mouth was moving, but I don't think any sound was coming out. I think the other shows we opened with were Pinafore, Pirates, Iolanthe, Yeoman and Gondoliers. Then later in my first year, Sorcerer was added, and I think it was in my second year that Gondoliers went out of the repertoire and Ruddigore came in. I liked all of the shows, but I most enjoyed doing Sorcerer and Ruddigore as they were done less frequently. I also loved the music of Yeoman. I really don't have a least favourite. Generally, touring could be quite tiring, especially when we played a theatre for just 1 week, then moved on. Southsea to Sunderland was my first journey, and very long. Also, I've never driven, but I made friends with Bruce Graham, who gave me lifts everywhere. On stage, there was a terrific sense of teamwork and a feeling of not wanting to let anyone down, which I think was a good training ground for any future ensemble work. I rarely went off sick because I hated not being there, but I remember once in the opening chorus of Iolanthe, I had a bad coughing fit and had to leave the stage. I was very upset. I think my first theatre, Southsea, was probably the worst venue that I played. It was privately owned, I think, and it was in a bad state of repair. I remember not wanting to put my bare feet on the dressing room floor because the carpet was so tatty. Better theatres were more modern and seemed cleaner, like Nottingham and Plymouth. But if I had to choose a favourite, it would be Sadler's Wells because of its history. I was a bit of a ballet fanatic when I was young and read a series of books about it, the first of which was called A Dream of Sadler's Wells. Although not as a ballerina, I liked the fact that I danced there too. We also did some filming for Chariots of Fire, which came out in 1981. The Ladies' Chorus and Pitti-Sing and Pete Bow were filmed performing Three Little Maids on stage, with Alice Krieger as Yum Yum. The wardrobe department worked very hard. Although many costumes could only be dry cleaned, there was always lots of washing to do. I remember we kept individual pairs of shoes for each show in a drawstring bag, along with the socks for that show. And I seem to remember those socks only being washed every 3 performances. The wig mistress was also very busy. With 6 different shows on the road and 16 lady choristers, plus principals and some men's wigs too, she certainly had her hands full. I did worry about saving enough money to pay my tax. Although we did have subsistence paid in cash each week, our actual salary was paid into our bank account, and I recall that my bank, which should remain nameless, hardly ever got the name of the company correct on my bank statements. There was a wide variety of names, but I think the funniest was Diddley Crate.
That name's going to stick with me now forever.
Oh dear.
I said that you covered some of the mezzo roles. Do you have a particular favourite out of them?
Well, there's a bit of a story. After I'd been in the company for about 6 months, one of the mezzos was moving up to soprano, and we had what the company called a field day to reallocate her mezzo understudies. Most of the mezzos sang, and I was asked to sing Iolanthe's song. But before the results were announced, we travelled to Bristol to open with Pinafore on the first night. We were getting ready for the show when the staff producer came to the ladies' chorus dressing room and called me outside. He asked me if I thought I could perform Pitti-Sing in the Mikado the following night, as the principal mezzo was ill. I'd never played the part before, but I knew it was an opportunity to be given the cover, and I really wanted it. I said that I would have to come out of the evening's performance and rehearse with the producer and the pianist in the bar. This I did, and after the show I went back to the digs and sat up half the night going through some harmony lines with one of my friends. The next day there were more rehearsals, and I'm happy to say that the performance went well, and they gave me several mezzo covers to do, including Iolanthe. Then, as I said, in my second year, a revival of Ruddigore came in. Auditions were held for some covers and small parts, and I was given the cover of Mad Margaret. There were also some understudy costumes that had to be fitted. These were for more individual characters. Covers for many smaller roles could go on wearing their own chorus costumes. Because of how all this came about, I've a particular fondness for Pitti-Sing, but I also love Iolanthe for her music, and Mad Margaret, well, that's just a gift.
Mm. So did you actually get to play Mad Margaret?
No.
No. Oh,
I
what a
have
shame.
played it. I played it at university.
Right.
But not with D'Oyly. No.
Or Diddley.
Oh, Diddley, great. Yes.
You mentioned that your two favourites really were Sorcerer and Ruddigore, so we are in total alignment on that.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
okay.
Ruddigore is my all-time favourite.
That's wonderful.
Yes. With that opportunity to play Pitti-Sing, you had 24 hours notice. Did you have any really short notice requests, turning up on the half and Peter Riley rush out to tell you, tonight, Pamela, you will be...
I think they weren't always scheduled performances, certainly. I'm trying to think how much notice I have. I don't remember, for example, coming back on a matinee day having stuffed myself with dinner. I don't remember anything like that. But they weren't always scheduled.
No.
They were sort of, might have been the day before or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
When on tour, you are probably performing a different opera each night. Whilst this gives you an element of variety, it can lead to drops in concentration. Did you witness anything amusing happening on stage, or that you can share with us, or anything that actually happened to you?
Well, not really due to lapses of concentration, but I can think of a couple of amusing situations that arose. The first occurred because my Pirates partner was trying to be funny. He brought a very sticky mint sweetie on stage and managed to force it into my hand. This meant I had to hold on to it so that it didn't drop to the floor and cause more amusement. But it also meant I wouldn't be able to do the many hand gestures that were coming up. Fortunately, I managed to stuff it inside one of the fingerless gloves that I was wearing, so I was spared. And then on another occasion, during Celia's solo, her prickly wand caught on her net skirt and lifted it up by several inches, revealing a pair of pop socks and bare knees underneath. Fortunately, I don't think that she was aware of it, or it might have affected her singing, but I'm sure the audience were as amused as the chorus of fairies.
I appreciate that the daytime could have been taken up with rehearsals and matinees, but basically you were a night worker. How did you fill your free time during the day, a time when people other than your co-workers were probably at work?
One of the sopranos taught me how to knit, and I made a few fantastic picture jumpers, working both in the digs during the day and in the dressing room during longer scenes without the chorus. Also, a group of us learned how to play bridge, which we continued to do long after the company closed. I also remember Alan Spencer taught some of us how to tap dance, and we did a great routine during, I think it was my first last night of the London season. I still have those tap shoes in my wardrobe.
Oh. So as I mentioned at the beginning, today is actually the 44th anniversary of the closure of the original D'Oyly Carte. It was a very sad night, but I was lucky enough to be there in the audience. What do you remember of that particular evening?
I'm really sad that I didn't remember it today, I have to say. But my one excuse is that today was my mum and dad's wedding anniversary. I remembered that much at least, but I'd forgotten.
A good enough reason to
the closing day.
Forget the other.
Well, the last night shows were really good and a chance to do something new. I remember, I think it was Paul Seeley who wrote some clever orchestral arrangements combining Sullivan's music with other well-known musical numbers. That was really very clever indeed. And of course, the closing night was an emotional occasion, but as you know, it was the final last night of the London season, filled with altered words and new choreography, so we all had to really concentrate on what we were doing. Also, after the show, a few of us went for supper at a West End restaurant, so I don't think the enormity of it all really kicked in until the next day. The security of a full-time job had come to an end, and most of us became freelance singers. Yeah.
So you say that you became a freelance singer. How did you fill your time?
Well, first of all, that same spring, I did some European operetta at Sadler's Wells.
Right.
And later in the year, I did the first of several pantomimes in Glasgow.
We could say, oh no you didn't.
But, yes I did. These were long seasons of about 3 months. And I remember standing on stage in my red velvet walk-down costume trimmed with white fur and thinking that the rest of the population were out there buying their Easter eggs. I also did a couple of Christmas spectaculars at Thursford in Norfolk, which involved just about every kind of music you could think of. Then going back to opera, I did a few seasons with Kent Opera and more productions with other small opera companies. I think one of the largest productions I've ever been part of was an Eastern European Turandot performed at the Albert Hall. Because the venue is so large, they wanted a handful of British singers to swell their ranks. However, due to very little rehearsal time, we were just herded on and off the stage and also given very inferior costumes and wigs. I remember feeling quite depressed about it. I went to the pub afterwards with another mezzo and we had a few drinks to drown our sorrows. Unfortunately, that didn't really work, as we realised that we spent most of our fee at the bar because the pay was so poor. Happier memories are of foreign visits. To Berlin in a large-scale production of Carmen, in which I was able to touch Jose Carreras. Incidentally, later in that same year, I also took part in just about the smallest production of Carmen ever, playing the title role. This was in London, and I'd auditioned for the part of Mercedes and was quite surprised to be offered the lead. It's a huge part and a big, big sing, so I really had to think about it before accepting. An excellent coach, Peter Crockford, helped me a lot, and the performances went well. Other happy foreign trips were Magic Flute in Milan and northern France, playing Second Lady and Second Boy. Also touring Australia and New Zealand, and coast-to-coast American tours on which I got together with my second husband, Ralph. There were also many recordings of musicals for That's Entertainment Records, which were recorded at Abbey Road. I recall that in the cafe during the break, none other than Liam Gallagher, who had been recording in another studio, came up to me and said that he liked my T-shirt. All the other girls in my session were totally impressed. Throughout this period, I continued to do GNS with London Savoyards, GNS for All, Buxton GNS Festival, New Sadler's Wells, Grimsdyke and Carl Rosa. In particular, I remember in Hull sharing the theatre with Sooty, who was on in the afternoons while we played the evenings. I remember telling people that I played a split week with Sooty, which isn't really quite accurate, so I'll sweep that under the carpet. No. Groan. I also did Ratepayers Iolanthe in London's West End, which was a rather different take on Gilbert's libretto by Ned Sherrin, and in which I played a punk fairy. Also, of course, over the same period of years after the cart closed, a cooperative concert group was formed, and we performed in several number one theatres and concert halls all over the country. These concerts were very important to me, and I remember on a few occasions getting the overnight bus from Glasgow to London on a Saturday night after Panto to do a Sunday concert somewhere down south. I then had to return to Scotland for the Monday show. I shouldn't have done it really, and would have been in trouble if I'd been found out. In 1987, I auditioned for the new D'Oyly Carte Opera Company. Myself and Guy Matthews were the only two members of the old company to join the new chorus in 1988. The work was seasonal, but I did it for about 14 years. Now, Lawrence, if I were to give you a list of companies, D'Oyly Carte, New D'Oyly Carte, Kent Opera, New Sadler's Wells, Carl Rosa, London Savoyards, London City Opera, Travelling Opera and European Chamber Opera, try to think of the two things that they all have in common. Well, don't worry, I'll tell you.
Right, thank you.
Number one, I worked for them all. And number two, they all closed.
Right, I'm beginning to see a trend here.
Furthermore, for the first and only time in my life, I was later headhunted by a fixer to sing in Sir Charles Mackerris's 80th birthday performance of HMS Pinafore at the Albert Hall. I was considered to be a GNS specialist because of my D'Oyly Carte experience.
So you've made reference there to the new D'Oyly Carte, and I think one of the big differences, certainly after the new company got underway, was that they moved away solely from doing Gilbert and Sullivan and included some of the European operettas, often by Offenbach. I certainly remember seeing a wonderful production of Orpheus in the Underworld. Did you enjoy that opportunity then to sing with the D'Oyly Carte, but doing non-GNS?
Yes, I did. I mean, when it started, it was just purely GNS. I can't remember how many years it took before. It was a few years before they brought in the European operetta. But it was very refreshing to do a bit of both. And I think you saw me as Minerva in Office in the Underworld. Yeah. I also did some, I think I said earlier, European operetta with New Sadler's Wells. I was Chloe in La Belle Hélène. But yes, the new company was very different. I thought it was going to sort of build up a repertoire so that it would end up with maybe half a dozen GNS on offer or something. I think the most it ever did was about 3 in one season, 3 GNS operettas. But I remember whenever a show came back, they wouldn't necessarily revive it. They'd start again.
Yes.
It would be a different producer, a different look, a different costumes, different set and everything. So that was a big difference. And also, of course, because it was always seasonal. It wasn't ongoing. And therefore there was a bigger turnover of people So I wouldn't say it was always like starting again, because as I said, I did it for about 14 years. I probably did it more than anybody else. But it was almost like starting again each time.
Yes.
Whereas once you'd got into the old company, new people came in, but you were part of the regime. So that was a big difference as well.
Right, so I believe that you have some stage photographs that you're going to share with us, but whilst we watch these, it would be nice if we can hear a little bit of music of you actually singing. So are you able to introduce the piece that we're going to hear?
Yes, I've got this recording. It was recorded in 1986, I believe, at the Theatre Royal in Norwich on stage. It was a Magic of D'Oyly Carte concert. And we did 3 different concerts that week, I remember. And unfortunately, for her, not for me, Lorraine was ill, and I took her place for each of the concerts. This was the middle concert, which we played for 2 nights. It was actually recorded from the wings on a cassette player. So it's not the best quality, but I hope it comes across okay. I'm quite happy with the singing, but as I say, it wasn't recorded from the front and not professionally. And it's of Iolanthes' song.
All right, Nice to hear that. Thank you. So people often talk about the D'Oyly Carte being a family. Have you managed to keep in touch with any former colleagues from 40 years ago?
Well, I married Ralph in 2003 and had quite a big wedding in a Methodist church. Apart from the organist, we had 4 instrumentalists from the American tour of Carmen play for us. Also, David Mackey played the piano, and during the signing of the register, Anne-Louise Straker and Barry Clark sang "O Love, True Love" from The Sorcerer, and a small ensemble sang "When the Buds Are Blossoming" from Ruddigore. This included Bruce Graham, Tom Marandola and Caroline Tatlow from the old company. There were also several other singers in the congregation, which meant the hymn singing was particularly rousing. I still meet up with Lorraine Daniels from time to time, and also Bruce Graham, Caroline Hudson and Caroline Tatlow live quite near me, and I see them more often. Then there's Kevin West and Philip Creasy. I go out to lunch with them sometimes with Ralph, because Ralph was very friendly with them in Kent Opera, so that's a double connection really. And in fact, in about 3 years' time, it'll be 50 years since some of us joined, and we've already discussed how we might celebrate that. Certainly, a visit to the Savoy Grill or the American Bar has been mooted.
What a good idea. Finally, what would you say was your main memory that you've taken away from your time with the D'Oyly Carte?
Well, apart from the joy of performing some of the shows that I'd grown to know and love as a job, 2 other things come to my mind. Firstly, I'd never come face to face with any fans before. I remember after my first scheduled performance of, I think it was Edith in Pirates, one girl was waiting at the stage door. She congratulated me and asked for my autograph, which made me feel very special. Also, I remember on one occasion in Manchester, I went on at the last minute as Edith, and because it was unscheduled, my name didn't appear in the cast list, and an announcement was made before the overture. Apparently, a chap arrived late for the show and missed the announcement, and so didn't catch my name. He wrote to the company head office asking who I was, as he wanted to follow my career. They sent me a copy of his letter in which he described me as a mauve charmer, my costume was mauve, and a star of the future. How lovely is that?
Oh, wonderful.
I still have the copy of his letter among my souvenirs. Finally, I think that the camaraderie of the company was terrific. The dressing room was like a home from home, especially during the long London season. I remember one Boxing Day we had 2 shows to do, and in my dressing room about 8 of us each brought in a couple of slices of turkey, and someone had also brought a jar of curry sauce and a slow cooker. We all enjoyed turkey curry in between shows. I don't think the wardrobe mistress would have approved, but we loved it. Also, on matinee days, big confession, we often had a bottle of wine in our dressing room, and between shows, a very small measure was shared out between 8 of us. Again, probably not something that everyone knew about. I even had a nickname in the company. Everyone called me Mavis, or Maeve for short, and some of my friends still use those names to this day. And I have another prop here in this bag to sort of prove it. This mug has toured with me since the beginning of the old D'Oyly Carte with Mavis written on it. And it was one of my friends, I'm pretty sure it was Bruce. Oh. Bruce Graham bought me this mug and I've still got it.
I will ask him next time I see him.
Okay, I'm sure it was him. Also, I have permanent memories of the old company in a few beautiful large posters of some of the shows, Mikado, Iolanthe and Yeoman. I had them framed and they hang on the wall as you go upstairs in my house.
Well, thank you so much for the hospitality today and agreeing to have this chat with me. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.